Good boy, Tucker.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
Hey.
Welcome.
Work smarter where you want.
Consistency is key.
And remember, if it's not in Redtail, it never happened.
This is learning at its most fun.
So good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. My name is Catherine Beltran, and I'm a trainer here at Redtail Technology. Today, we're going to be just discussing our Redtail essentials on notes. So this really is a huge topic. I know on the surface, it doesn't seem like there's a lot that can really go into notes besides just being like a record keeper. But that's really not true. There's a lot that goes into notes. There's a lot you can do with it. There's a lot that you might not even be aware that it can do now. But there really has been some great strides and great organizational tools that go into notes. So let's go ahead. Let's kind of discuss how today is going to kind of work. Because like I said, it's a lot that goes into it. So we're going to kind of navigate all things that are notes. So we'll start off by saying what it is, how you can organize that. If you weren't aware, there's note templates, so we'll go over that as well. How to actually add a note, and then how to find those notes. Then we'll review kind of a very confusing topic that we tend to get a question on, workflow step notes versus notes. And then we'll wrap up with some reporting before we get to some questions. So with that said, let's hop on over to the next slide and actually answer the question of, well, what is a note? What are those things that we should be doing? And a note in itself is everything that's already happened. Notes are past tense. So think of it as discussions you might have had, suggestions you've made, anything that you have talked to your client about, or anything that you might be afraid could come back at you and they might have an argument over. That's really what a note is. So another way to kind of look at it is that CYA application. So hopefully everyone knows what that means, but if you don't, what it is just saying, hey, cover your assets, put it into Redtail. Now we have a very popular saying here when it comes to notes, and that is if it's not in Redtail, it didn't happen. So what that's really saying is that, hey, if we don't put in the note, where is that proof that we had that recommendation? Where's that proof that we told them, hey, don't do that? Where is it that we have that kind of backup to what exactly what we're saying? So that's really what a note is. Again, just remember though, it's everything that has already happened. So it's not talking about the future. It's anything that might have been 2 seconds ago, 2 days ago, 2 weeks ago. That is a note. Now, something else that always goes into notes that we always suggest that goes into it, and that's actually organizing your notes. So before I even hop into the CRM, this is something that I always want to go over, is that you can actually use categories to help organize your notes. You do have to be an admin, and I know not all of us are, but an admin is who honestly can control those categories. Now, to get there, and I feel like I start every video this way, but it really is true, we're going to get to that managed database list. So if you're looking at these images on this screen, this is ultimately where you're going to get to. But again, just remember, you have to be an admin. So let's actually kind of hop over. Whoops, not that. Let's go this way. Whoops, I am just messing this up. There we go. We'll get to our CRM here, and we're actually going to talk about that managed database list. So again, we'll come up to our name in the top right-hand corner. I'm logged in as Tucker, our training here. Come on down to manage your account, and we'll come all the way to the bottom until we see this admins only and click on manage database list. So like always, everything that's on this right-hand side is customizable, but I want to come all the way down here until it says activities and notes in bold and actually click on categories. Categories is something that does apply to both activities and notes, but for today's purpose, we're going to talk about it in the note perspective. So this is one of those fields that we can customize to really adapt what we put into it to make sense with terminologies that we use. So like types, like several other actual fields in the system, there are custom defaults as well as customs. You can always tell the difference by the little action icon in here. If it's a default, it doesn't have one. But this really is a list that we highly recommend that you add to it. Again, this is your way of using those common terms that you use to discuss, hey, here's what this note is talking about in a quick 1 or 2 word type description. So once that we've kind of added in account support, maybe we want to put in here like a client note specifically. So anything we might have discussed, client updates. So something that's huge that's part of their change. Maybe they move a lot. Maybe they're having some life changes in there. That's something you want to have. Compliance, money movement, family planning. So again, anything that you provide that's a hot, high ticket item, put that in as a category so that way, looking back on it, I can easily go, okay, I want to know every note I've ever entered in that has um, account support as that category. That's something that we can easily pull. Again, I highly recommend adding some more custom types in here because this is going to definitely differ office per office. We don't all provide the exact same services, but this is where we can use this category to really reflect, hey, these are the services that we actually focus on. So again, to get here, your name, manage your account, and then scroll all the way to the bottom until you see admins only, and then you'll see manage database list. Now, the next item that's also actually back here is those note templates. So before I even add in a note, what is a note template? Well, a note template's actually a way to help with consistency. It's a help as far as like just kind of making sure that, hey, every time I enter a note, it has this format. I'm not forgetting anything. It really can act kind of like a second brain. Because I mean, we all know there's certain times where we're like, God, did I put that in the note? I can't remember. This can kind of help really make sure that we are in fact putting in all of those details. So again, still back in our name, still back under manage your account. This time though, under this manage templates, this is actually where we're going to see this note templates. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that here. And if you've never entered in a note template before, yours might be a blank page here, and that's perfectly fine. That just means you haven't pursued this opportunity just yet. But to add in a new note template, you might have guessed it, we're going to click on new. Now, when you click on new, you're going to get a pop-up that looks almost identical actually to how it would be when we enter in a new note. There's less details at the bottom, of course, but the whole concept of that note itself, that body, the real kind of meat and potatoes of your note itself, this is where you can kind of build out that format and have that category selected so that way every time it goes in with the correct category. So to show kind of some examples that we might have in here, and of course, always hold ours as a grain of salt. You do not have to phrase it the exact same way we do. We always like to have fun with our training database. But something like this one, this one's just asking a series of questions where it's saying, hey, did you do this? What did you discuss? Who was it that we were actually talking to in the meeting? Was it just our client or did he bring a spouse? Or was it the client and did they bring the 3 beneficiaries that might be affected by this certain change this year? So definitely keeping track of all of those details of who we talked to, what we talked about, that's really what drives your body of your note. So again, you can have something like this where it's just kind of a template of questions so we can answer it next to the content on the contact record. Or it could be something just really simple saying like, hey, we set the appointment, they confirmed, perfect. So we have called and confirmed that appointment is still on. Party on, Garth. So that's where we just want to have, again, maybe don't put that part in your note record, but this is where we want to say, hey, I don't want to have to type this every single time I have to enter this note. I want to go ahead and put this in so I can select it going forward. Save me some clicks, save me some time, save me some sanity. That's definitely where this is coming from. So again, note templates are available for anyone to actually use. Anyone can set them up. It's just a matter of actually coming back to your name, coming to manage your account, and actually creating that note template. But again, note templates do not require an admin access to create. Only the managed database list with categories requires the actual admin access. So now that we've kind of got like the foundation, or I should say kind of like the background buildup, what else can we actually do when it comes to our notes? And there's quite a bit that goes into it. But the actual core concept of adding a note, we want to make sure it's in the actual system. So coming back to our today page, just to kind of refresh our page here for a second, there's multiple ways you can actually add in a note. Technically, you can add in a note from anywhere in the CRM with this quick add button at the top here, and then coming on down to notes. However, I do actually recommend coming to the contact record first. So I'm going to come on over to Tim Taylor and actually start from the contact record first. Now I'm going to have this open under 2 tabs just so I can kind of show what the difference is. But if I click on latest notes, I can add a note right from the center of the page, or I can come up to this quick add and click notes again. Now, either or is going to give me this pop-up. Now, I did say there's something very distinguishable as far as coming to the contact record versus just starting from anywhere in the CRM and adding that quick add. Well, actually there's two. The first thing that you're going to notice is that it automatically pre-fills that contact's name. So we have Timothy, Tim Taylor, Timothy, Tim Taylor. If I had started from the today page, come up to my quick add, come back down to notes, it's going to require me to fill in that contact record here. Now, I know that might not seem like a huge deal, but if we have names that might be very similar, or I have junior, seniors, thirds, fourths, fifths, so on and so forth, I might run into that incidental of human errors where I just pick the wrong person. We don't purposely do it, but it could happen. Now, there's always ways to fix that, but it's just, again, taking up more time than we really want to give. So go to the contact record, automatically pre-fills. The second, and to me, probably the bigger kind of plus to this note is that this will actually kind of auto save as you start typing out the note. So that way, if you accidentally close out or your computer decides, hey, I'm not going to work today and just completely shuts down on you, or if you feel like it's one of those days where everyone is bugging you at that exact moment, again, this note will start saving as you go. So if you're like me, where I tend to talk way too much and I tend to write way too much, I might have a very lengthy note. And if I lose that, I'm going to sit there, probably cry a little bit because I just did all of that hard work. And I'm going to sit there and go, no, I'm going to have to start over. But that's not the case actually when you start from a contact record. When you start typing on a contact record, call Tim to discuss his accounts, so on and so forth, it'll actually start to auto save and save as a draft down here. So if my computer decided, hey, I'm going to shut down on you without telling you, or hey, I accidentally get fat fingered and completely close this note out, it's automatically going to save it down here. And it's just a matter of clicking copy and then coming back up here and finishing your thoughts. Now, again, that's a perk of starting from the contact record. You do not get that saved or show draft as an option when you do not start from a contact record. So just kind of incentivize to go to the contact record first. It ultimately might save you some time and some patience and maybe some choice words down the road by just coming to the contact record first. Now I'm going to actually stay on this page just to kind of show a couple of things that go into a note, because this, of course, is the real important piece of it, but there's so much more that goes into a note than just the note itself. There's all these little kind of details that attach itself onto it. So coming right below that, we actually have that category that we were talking about earlier. So your way of organizing your notes. So again, if I want it to be maybe under one of these other system types, I can still do that. But if I want to have it so that way it's more specific, that's where this custom types comes into play. So definitely use this as just a quick way of saying, hey, this is what this note is about. Below that, this is where you can actually link multiple contacts. So a common question that we get all the time, hey, I'm starting from Tim's record, but his wife Jill also needs to be aware of this note. And I don't really want to have to come up here, highlight everything, copy and paste. And you don't have to actually. I can just come on down here, start typing out her name. There she is right here, click her, and this same note's going to be copied on over to her record as well. So it's just, again, saving you that extra time just by looking for the contact and linking them right here. Similar kind of scenario actually comes up with accounts as well. So right below that, you have this option to link any of those counts. So again, if maybe a particular account's the only one you're talking about that day, you can just click the one account that's being discussed. Something that's actually new within the last few weeks is the ability to add multiple. So for the longest time, you used to have to just pick one, but now you can have the ability to say, hey, you know what? We talked about these two specific accounts only. I want to link both of those here. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that this is going to link the account on the contact record over here. But if I were to go to that particular account, I would actually see like a note attached at the bottom of that account page as well. So it really is one of those kind of, I don't want to call it a flag, but it really is like a flag saying, hey, you've talked about this before to your contact. And then below that, you have notification options. Now, I always like to say use these sparingly, because if you're sending out, or if you click here and you say, hey, every single time, I'm going to let Catherine, that's me, notify that, hey, this is a new note that's been added. I would get an email every single time a new note has been added. Now, for compliance purposes, there's not any of those details discussed actually in the note in that email notification. All it really is just saying, hey, here's a new note, go check it out type of thing. So that's why we say use it sparingly, use it for those really hot topic type of items. Maybe you finally heard back from the contact and it's been a while and you're like, oh God, what's happening? Maybe it's something that it's been a huge project you've been doing and it's maybe wrapping up. Those are where those notifications might be really handy. Similar kind of aspect with permissions. This is more of those kind of use when you need it scenarios, and that's with our permission type. So if you have a note that you really don't need everyone to see, maybe it's only a specific group of users, or maybe it's just yourself in that scenario, this is where permissions actually come into play. So for example, maybe Tim's complaining about one of my coworkers. I don't like to cause a lot of drama at work, so this might be a permission note that I would want only myself to be seeing, or maybe just my team. Similarly, maybe he has like a medical issue that he's going through, and again, he doesn't want everyone in the office to be aware of that. That's where you can permission these notes. Now, does it have to be one of those two scenarios? Definitely not. You get to decide when you want those permissions to come into play, but just know it is an option for you to control who ultimately can see those notes. Now, one exception to that rule is the database owner. The database owner is still going to see everything. I always call the database owner our all-seeing eye, and that's really because permissions are a moot point when it comes to our database owner. So just be aware of that. Um, Obviously, we never want to talk badly about our coworkers, so I don't think we have to worry about any notes out there. But just again, be aware that the permissions do not necessarily play a role when it comes to database owners. Now, coming right below that, something that is really new, and actually I think something that a lot of users were actually asking about, and that's the ability to attach a document to a note. So again, this is something that's brand new. So if you've been working with notes for years and you decided to hop on today and you saw this and you're like, wait, what is this? This is brand new. I promise you're not losing your mind. It hasn't been around for forever, but something we get all the time. Hey, I write handwritten notes and I want to be able to attach that directly to the note. You can always scan that, take a picture, put it in here, and now you have that note and that document all attached together. So something really cool about that. I love it. Again, it's just an easy way to keep it all together versus tracking it down across, several screens on your computer, all in one shot type of thing. Now, the last thing I'm actually going to talk about when it comes to adding a note is this ability of create a follow-up activity. So sometimes you might come into a scenario where it's like, hey, I just had this conversation. I need to remember to review the paperwork and send it over to Tim. If that's the case, you have the ability to create a follow-up activity. So I'm actually going to come back up because I want to show a template in action. I'm actually going to ignore this for a second. And I'm just going to say, hey, you know what? Let's do appointment confirmation. So called and confirmed the appointment is still on. Tim is going to bring Jillian as well. So I'll just use something like that. But what this actually showed is that I started with a template and I just added on to it and I actually took something away from it. So if that's another way you can kind of look at templates, this is just a starting point. That could be another benefit when it does come to those templates. So definitely just kind of keep that in mind. But if I come on down here, any category that would be attached would also pre-fill. So in here, if I know for a fact that we're going to actually be talking about just himself kind of thing, just kind of update where they're at in their life, I can put this under client meeting notes and it'll save under client meeting notes. Again, I've already attached Jillian here, attached a couple of accounts that I know we're going to be talking about. I'm not going to add anything else, but I want to create that follow-up activity just to make sure that, hey, I have my appointment on my schedule. It's one thing to take the call and say, yeah, Friday at 2 p.m. works. But then if I don't put it on, Lord knows I'm clocking out early and I'm going home. So making sure that that is actually on your calendar. So I'll come in here Maybe I'll put in here, let's see if I have one here actually. I don't really have one that's a perfect fit, so I'm not going to use a template. And I could save that note. And when I have this checked off, you're going to see here actually, it's going to immediately bring me to that activity page. This also brings up a really cool feature that, again, kind of just gets glossed over just because it's kind of smaller on the screen. That's actually our linked notes over on the right-hand side. So again, I got to this page by clicking that small little box that said create a follow-up. And I actually, again, because I started from that note, the link note attaches to this activity. Now that brings me up to another point. Do I have to start from a note to get a linked note for an activity? And the answer is no, actually. I can actually start with the activity and then add a linked note after the fact. And let me actually show you that really quick here. So if I come on over to Tim, and I'm just going to come back this way really quick, come on over here. This one was already created with Tim. If I scroll on down, you're going to see I have no linked notes over here, but I can easily come over here and say, missed a call with Tim. He spoke to my assistant and said that they are running a little behind. They will be here as soon as possible. All right, so something as simple as that. That's an easy way of just saying, hey, this is something that was relevant to it. It's something I want to be able to reflect on. Anything that I want to be able to look back on in the past, again, that's where notes are coming into play. So I can come in here and say, you know what, this also will still go under client meeting notes, add that note, and now again, that link note is attached to this activity. So either route you go, starting from a note, creating a follow-up, or starting with an activity and creating that link note, no matter what, it's going to have those connected. Now, again, that brings up one more concept that we kind of see just happen unintentionally, or just don't even really think about it. Sometimes we'll put in notes under this description. Definitely avoid that. If there's anything that we think is really important, anything we want to look back on, anything we want to report on, that's really where you're going to want to use those linked notes. Think of descriptions as just like a reminder saying, hey, you want to talk about this, this, and this. What you actually say and what you've actually recommended, that's where notes really come into play. Now, all notes, as far as the link notes and like the main contact notes, they're actually going to date, time, and user stamp. So if I hover right over here for link notes, it actually has today's date and time and then by who actually added it. Now, link notes also, if I come back to his main contact record here, will reflect on his note section as well. So here's actually that note I just put in there, missed a call with Tim. He spoke to my assistant and said that they're running a little behind. They'll be here as soon as possible. So that's actually there right here at the top of this latest notes list. And as I can see right on over here in the corner, that's that activity I started with. This right below that is the note I added right before. There's those two linked accounts. Here's that follow-up activity. And here again is that linked contact. So there's multiple things that you can easily see just from this one page here. Now, this is just your latest notes. There are definitely, obviously, more for Tim Taylor than these. I believe it's actually 8 or so notes, depending on the actual content amount it is. There's definitely more than that, though, unless they're literally added today. But if I want to see all of those other notes, notes over on the left-hand side is actually where you're going to want to head to. So again, we have latest notes, just going to be the most recent ones you've added in. But notes over on the left is actually where you're going to be able to see more of those notes further into the past. Now, on this page here, again, probably looks a little bit familiar because it's of course showing the most frequent, the last two, I should honestly say. But in here, there's actually more options that we can do with this note. Again, if I come back, and I'm going to close this one out, I'm just going to pull up his main record here. If I come back to this latest notes, all I can really do is see what's here. I have a couple of different options under this actions, like print or change category if I labeled it wrong. Maybe I forgot to click that create follow-up. Maybe I put it on the wrong person. I could always do that from here. But as far as maybe filtering those options, you're better off coming over to the notes on the left-hand side. And then over on the far right, this is where, again, we have more of those options. So types, this is saying like, hey, is it an activity? Now, again, I'm going to take a minor step back and say that anytime we complete an activity, it does become a historical note here. So if I wanted to list that down, I could always list it by these different types in here. But more importantly, something I'm coming back to when I first started this webinar, those categories that we were going over. Again, remember I said if I want to find everything I've ever talked to Tim about that has to deal with account support, I can filter that down. Maybe I'm not worried about the type. I can filter it down by that category and see if I have any notes that are applied to that. So again, this is just your way of easily figuring out, hey, here's every time I've ever talked to him about account support. It takes far less than going through and saying, hey, I have everything saved as general information. Now, I know that happens, so what could we really do? And that's actually the search text below that. So maybe we haven't really been implementing categories, and now we're sitting here going, well, I need to find a particular note. I don't know where to go. I don't want to have to scroll and scroll and scroll for days. What you can actually do is search by text over here. So if you're finding anything that has the word paperwork, if I can spell it correctly, there we go, paperwork, I can click apply, and it's going to give me only those notes that have to have that word paperwork in there. So if you aren't using categories yet, I would recommend it, but you could still maybe find those kind of particular notes as long as you have kind of a word or phrase, kind of a hotkey, I should say, that you can honestly search for. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove that. I'm going to go ahead and apply because I want everything to pop back up for me here. I'm going to show the last thing here, which is showing your family notes. So if I click apply here, it's actually going to show me anything that actually has to deal with that family membership. So right up here. So anything that has those linked contacts, that's where we're seeing this ultimately come in. Now, again, if you're seeing anything that has maybe an activity, just know that they're probably also part of that activity that you can readily availably see. But again, it's just your easy way of saying, hey, I want to know all of those shared notes. This is where I can just check that box off and then again, apply that actual, just that one minor change here. Now, again, I'm going to remove that because I want everything in here. And the last thing I want to show from this page is actually under options. So sometimes we get the question of, hey, I put all of my notes under my head of household, which is Tim in this instance here. He's now passed away. I no longer look at his contact records because I strictly work with Jill now. And I don't want to have to hop back and forth, but I know for a fact not everything's over. If that's the case where you started off and Jill really doesn't have anything over, you could always move those notes over. So I know, again, if you come into that perspective saying, hey, I want to shift all of these notes over to this other contact record, this is where you ultimately have that option. Now, again, under actions, though, you also have the ability to copy to a contact. If you have a note that, again, maybe I forgot to add in maybe one of his children, maybe one of the children is supposed to be attached to this note, this is where I can come on down here, copy to a contact, find that contact. Let's see here, there's Brad. Copy that in, copy that over, and that way it's on both records. So again, a couple different things that you can do, just ultimately depends on what it is that you're trying to ultimately accomplish, I should say. Now, the one last thing that I also want to actually point out just from this drop-down list is actually the pin note. So if there's a note that you're kind of using, I should say, to look back on with real importance and you don't want to have to hunt through it and you don't really want to filter it, pinning that note's actually going to keep that note at the top of that list. So that way you don't have to, like I said, scroll through and hunt it down until you finally see it. So just one more thing to make it a little bit easier on you. But again, definitely not required. Now, I did actually combine a couple of slides here. So I thought I would just kind of catch up since I know I clicked 17 slides, it seemed like, from the beginning. But again, link notes are an option when it comes to those activities. Viewing notes, you can see it on the contact record from the latest notes or left navigation. But something that often is very confusing for anyone who uses workflows is workflow step notes versus your regular notes. Now, if you don't use workflows, this is definitely going to be something that may not apply to you at this exact moment, but a workflow step note is completely different than a regular note that you add to a contact record. The big difference between the two is that step notes do not actually save as a note on the main contact page. Step notes reside strictly within the workflows itself. If it helps, the way I kind of always think about it is that step notes just help tell the story as to what's going on within that particular workflow. So if someone's rescheduling on you 15 times and you keep getting stuck within the same step over and over, that's where you're going to want to actually utilize those step notes to say, hey, here's why we keep rescheduling. Again, notes are going to be for anything that's like directly impacting that contact. Step notes is for anything in that workflow. I'm sorry. So if I come on back, I come on over to Tim Taylor here. Now he doesn't have any active workflows right at the moment here, but if I actually just add one in here really quick, just so we can kind of see what that looks like, let's just I'll do the client review one here real quick for us. I'll just pick a couple things. Now I will say at this moment, if you are interested in workflows, we did do a pretty big webinar series itself on workflows, on how to build them and how to use them and everything that goes into it. But as far as step notes actually go, if I complete this step over here and there's an outcome that exists, let me double check to make sure this one does, perfect. And again, if I complete this step and I get this outcome, this is where those step notes actually occur. So at this point in time, if I say, hey, client cancels, I can say Tim had an emergency. If I could spell emergency, there we go, emergency, and will no longer make it for our meeting. He said he would reach back out when life becomes a bit more normal. I think we can all relate to that in this year. It's been a little crazy of a year, and I can complete that step. Now, again, this step notes is going to reside within this workflow itself. So it's going to be right here. I can click on it over here. I can also click on step notes at the top here, get that exact same notes. But if I come back to Tim's main contact record, I actually think I do, I have it in here, refresh that page, I'm going to get a note for the actual workflow completed. But if I look between here and here, I'm not going to see anything that actually has to do with it saying Tim had an emergency. It's going to be the note I added earlier from that follow-up activity, and then a hop to, again, that workflow completion. So that's the main difference, is those step notes will not come to this latest notes, nor will it come over here by default. If I want to see those step notes from this page particularly, I'd have to look under actions and find the step notes here. So there's still a way to track them down. It's just, it's not going to be like the first thing you'll see if you default to the latest notes page here. So just wanted to kind of give you that reminder, because I know, again, we get that question of, where's my step notes? I swear I entered it. I can't find it. It's just under the actions, under step notes, if the workflow is completed and it's as a note here. Now, the next item that we actually have is going to be our last topic, which is our reporting options. So something that I haven't mentioned yet, but has a very, very large role when it comes to notes, is the ability to edit a note, which is not possible. You cannot edit a note once a note has been saved. You can delete a note, hence why we have the deleted notes report, but you cannot actually physically come in here and try to edit the actual content of a note. Again, we have chosen that for compliance purposes. We don't want anyone to get slapped with a huge fine. So once a note has been entered, that's how it is. Now, you always have this comments option to kind of expand that thought. So if you're like me, where you might have clicked it too soon, you need to kind of finish that thought, that's where comments can come in. But if you have a bunch of typos when you're typing in here, because again, if you're like me, I'm just struggle busting today. If you're like that, then you can come in here, and if you're seeing this, we did not add a color feature to our notes. Stop what you're doing, review it, and then actually make sure that what you have here is what you want that note to look like. Again, I'm going to say it one more time. Notes are not editable. You cannot make changes to the actual content. The only change that you can actually do when it comes to a note is the ability to change the category. Now, right below that, though, at the bottom, you have the option to delete. That is technically an option. However, as you might have seen from that previous page, we have the deleted notes report. So there's still a way to track that information down. So if I actually come on over here to common tasks and then come on over to run a report, I'm actually going to see about halfway down the notes deleted report. So if I click on that here, if I have any notes that have been deleted, I'm actually going to get that PDF document that I can easily see, oh, hey, we made a couple of deletions. What are these? Again, just kind of oh, that was in English, reverse. This is to help prevent maybe someone maliciously going in and saying, hey, I don't want you guys to see this. That's to avoid all of that. It's to help give you that extra layer of comfort of saying, hey, I deleted these because I just accidentally clicked the wrong thing when I saved it. So that really does bring up that point. When you come in here and you're adding a note, make sure you really have everything that you need, every discussion you want. You don't want to have to keep coming in here and deleting notes. It's really defeating the purpose. Your notes are in here to help build that history. Now, on that same topic though, how do we find all those notes that are in the past besides coming to notes here? Maybe I want like all of the notes for every contact I've entered in within a certain time period. That's where the notes by contact report actually enters in. So over on the left-hand side, we've got reports. If I actually come again about halfway down, I'm going to see note reports. And then we have notes by contact report here. So right here again, notes by contact. This is going to give you any contact notes that you have in here within a certain time period, or if you're looking for something in particular. Now, I love this particular report, but something I love more in regards to this report is utilizing the filter with this report. So if I click on filter and I want to know, hey, every single note I've entered in since the beginning of this year till now, and I will say you should not have any future notes because again, this is only in the past. If I don't really need to know a specific contact, maybe I want to know specifically a certain advisor, maybe again by a certain active or note type, certain category type. This is your way of finding that information. So this time I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say client review notes. I want to know every single client review note I've entered between January 1st and today's date. And again, maybe I want to know specifically, so I'm logged in as Tucker, so I want to know specifically for the user we're logged in. I'm going to apply that filter. And again, I'm going to get only those results that have to deal with that client review notes category. So this is really where that category benefit comes full circle here. This is why I kind of always start with that managed database list and end up wrapping up with reports, because this shows that benefit of just being able to come in here, pick a category, and now I have that report. So if I need to export it or get a PDF version, that took me far less time than having to come in here and go, well, I have some saved under customer service and some under general support, general information and policy support. So as you can see, it might be a couple different searches that you might ultimately find. Now, again, if you are not using categories yet, and hopefully I've kind of convinced you enough to use it, but you do also have a note text as well. So I always like to show this one as an example just because it's always a good little break in between the seriousness of notes. But if I want to know everything by anyone who's entered with a particular word, and I'm going to use the word Tesla, I can search by that one word, not worry about anything else here, apply that filter, and it's going to give me any note that, again, has that word. So similar to how it was on the left navigation on the contact record, this is just a bigger, more, I guess I should say like a wider cast, because this actually applies for a different contact. So just kind of wanted to show that because, again, I know sometimes we don't use that category at first, and now we're realizing, whoops, there are certain notes out there that I need to find. This is where that note text can ultimately come back into play.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.